Here we are, freshly starting Q2, quarter two in business. In this episode, I am going to walk you through how to do a post-mortem or a wrapping up of your Q1 so that you can see what needs to happen in your business to reach your yearly goals. If you're not yet setting yearly goals or project goals in your business, then I'm going to invite you to do that because that's the only way to see whether you're on track or not. And what I see in the online space especially is that entrepreneurs just kind of float about from one thing to the next, from one project to the next, and don't actually make something happen in their business. And make something happen, I mean, by leaning into your human design, don't worry. And then they get to the end of the year and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't make anywhere near enough to survive. And I'm going to have to look at getting a part-time job when it could all be avoided with a little bit of planning. So that's what we're diving into here. Whenever you finish a launch or a project or a month or a quarter in your business, I would love to invite you to do what I call a post-mortem. It's really an important piece of the puzzle because it gives you data that you can use moving forward. We talked about this yesterday on the Content by Design call because one of the participants had done a live event. So off she went to this live event and she came back into the group and she said, you know what? She's a manifestor. She said, you know what? I'm completely exhausted. I don't think I can do these live events anymore. I need to find a better way, all of the things. And these are all stories that we tell ourselves when we don't have the facts. So what we talked through on the call was her actually looking at the event. It was a 2-day event and writing down absolutely everything. Now she's in the place in her business where she is still trying to figure out what is the problem that she solves and how does she help her clients. So one of the things that I told her to do, or I invited her to do, was to go through all of the questions that she was asked. She was doing mini human design and astrology readings. I asked her to go through all of the questions that she was asked, go through themes in the chart. What were people coming to her for? And then also to look at, was I standing up all day? Was I sitting all day? Did I have enough food? Did I have enough water? How long was the event? How many people did I see? All of the things about the event so that she could look at the entire picture instead of just taking the one piece, I'm exhausted, and making all of her decisions based on that. And it's the same thing in your quarter. Now, what she discovered was actually that on day one, she was completely exhausted because she hadn't eaten. And she would have been in a lot better place. It's going to be the same thing for you when you look at your quarter. Maybe you're going to go over it and you're going to think that everything was wrong with it. And then you're going to realize, oh my gosh, if that one thing had been different, so then you can make it different in Q2. So first things first, go back to your yearly goal, whether this is an income goal or a project goal, a place you want to be at in your business, go back to that goal. And if you didn't set a yearly goal, then I'm going to link something in the show notes for you where you can go back to a workshop that I did within the human design community, but you can use it whether you're in the human design community or not, that shows you how to create your plan for the year so that you take care of the big projects in your life and your business and you don't feel like you are just filling up your time with all these tasks. That's going to be an important starting point. So once you have your goal for the year, then you can look at Q1 and see, did I come close to what I need to do in Q1 to reach that goal? So let's say that you have a goal of making $100,000 in the year, and in Q1 you made $10,000. That's leaving a pretty big gap for those other 3 quarters. Now, I will tell you that most businesses make more in the last quarter of the year than in the other quarters. So you don't have to make exactly a quarter of your proposed earnings in this first quarter, but you want to know that you're on track. So I'm going to give you a series of questions to ask yourself and reflections to do. And this is going to take some time for you to go back over the last 3 months and see where you did well and where you were off track. And then in next week's episode, I'm going to walk you through a process of planning your Q2 or any quarter that you're in so that you actually reach your goals and come closer to your yearly goal. Because again, the danger is when we don't do the big things, we fill up our lives with all of these little tasks, nothing gets done, and we end up beating ourselves up at the end of the year. So what worked in your business? That's the first thing that I invite you to look at, is what worked in your business in Q1. What did you knock out of the park? Maybe you gave a workshop. Maybe you were bang on with your content and your messaging. Maybe you served your clients in a really good way. Maybe you had a great work-life balance. Maybe you rested enough. All of the things. Let's look at what worked. And then let's look at what didn't work. Maybe you tried some things that were a flop. Maybe you didn't use time blocking, so you kind of filled up your days with tasks and you didn't really do anything that matters. Maybe you were in learning mode and you just kept following along and listening to podcasts and taking courses and all of the things. And then you got to the end of the quarter and you're like, whoa, I didn't make any money this quarter. So what didn't work? Maybe you burned yourself out. Maybe you went through a really big launch and you're flat on your back recovering. Well, that's something that didn't work either. Where did you use your human design strategy? Where did you lean into your need to be recognized, your need to be invited, your need to respond, your need to inform, your need to sample? Where did you lean in and really trust that? And how did it feel? What was different in the times that you responded versus not responding? Were there times when you pushed through that you didn't really lean in your strategy? And how can you make that different in Q2? What about your authority? As you may or may not know, I'm an emotional authority in human design. So how did you lean into your authority to make decisions? With emotional authority, that's about 50% of the population. It can be painful. And you may not have gotten through a decision in Q1 that you really wanted to make because you might still be sitting with it. Or maybe you pushed through and didn't listen to that inner authority, didn't listen to that inner voice, that intuition that you have, and you got a little bit off track. So where did you or didn't you trust your own authority in your business? How much did you work? So this is always an interesting one to look back on. If you feel like you're working all the time, or if you feel like you're not working enough, I invite you to start to track your time. This came up in my mastermind last week, where one of the participants was saying, I've gotten away from tracking my time, my work hours, and it's really affected my productivity. And this is a real thing in the entrepreneurial space, especially the online space, because there are a bazillion things we could be doing with our time. And sometimes we fill up our time with all of these little things and it's not really productive. So keeping track of your work hours can be a really good way to make sure that you stay on task. Deciding what top 3 priorities am I going to have this day or this week? Because we overestimate what we can get done in a day and we underestimate what we can get done in a week, a month, a year. So look at how many hours you're really, truly working. Get honest with yourself. Because a lot of the things that we call work in the online space aren't really moving you forward. And that's another point, is look at which income producing activities you're focused on and what things you're focused on that are just filling up time. Income producing activities are activities where you are in the room with a client, or activities that will directly relate to getting you in a room with a client. So income producing activities probably are not setting up the back end of your website or doing social media posts, things like that. It directly relates to getting you a client. If you know that you're going to launch this course and that 5% of people are going to buy, then that launch is income producing for sure. But if you are just filling up the social media algorithm just to fill it up, just to have your scheduler look like it's full, that's probably not producing income. What actually gets you in the room with people? Maybe a discovery call, maybe a workshop, something like that. And then I would ask how you felt as you went through the month. Look at all of the things that you want to feel in your life and your business and give them a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. Did I feel satisfied, frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed out, rested, joyful? What kinds of things were you feeling throughout the month? Put those on a little gauge for yourself so that you can course correct as you go on. And then let's look at the money, because money is the oxygen of your business. How much money did you actually bring in Q1? And I do want you to go back and track this. You may be shocked at how much you made. You may be looking at it and going, where did that money go? Or you may be shocked at how little you made. And you may be thinking, wow, this isn't sustainable. So the only way that you're going to be able to understand how much you need to make in your business is by actually looking at what you are making in your business. So get real with your numbers. What did you make in Q1? And if you set a yearly goal, is that close enough to that yearly goal for you to be on track? If not, how far off track are you and what needs to change? What do you need to be offering in Q2 that's actually going to make up that difference and bring the money in? So I invite you to go through this reflection exercise, take some time with it, sit with it. You may have other questions that you want to ask yourself, and then maybe just giving yourself a little bit of space and asking the universe, how can I move forward in my business in an intentional way in Q2? What is here for me? Give yourself space and grace before we meet next week when we're going to go over actually how to set up your Q2 in a really intentional way. I'm going to link that yearly planning session in the show notes for you so that you can go back and do the work if you haven't yet done that. This is going to be a powerful exercise in you actually reaching the goals that you have for your business. It's going to take a little bit of planning on your part, but then you can follow your human design strategy all the way to the bank. Because remember that your human design doesn't tell you what you can do. Your human design tells you how you do what you do.